Okay, my name is Nicole. I am 44, just turned 44. I still stay 43. I'm a mom of three. I'm married. I live in New Hampshire. Hobbies. I'm not like this crazy nut, but I love gardening. I love all outside things. I have cancer. Before that, I am in marketing and do digital marketing. I've done that for like 20 years. I love my friends and I love hanging out and I love the idea of going back and doing that all. Okay, symptom wise, I'll get it after my my last baby hatch in 2021. I didn't come back the way I used to for my other babies, but of course I was older. I was over 40. I had some thyroid issues. I was trying to see a endocrinologist, trying to get in there. It's impossible to see specialists. It was right around like the COVID, like coming around from COVID, so it was impossible to get in. Um, so everything that I was feeling could be attributed to my thyroid. Basic things. I'm pooped. Well, you have three kids now. Um, I had a weird rash on my arm. That's the only visible, tangible time in my life where I said, wow, why is this rash? It comes back, goes away, it comes back. I can't figure it out. Did I have wine? Did I have cheese? Did I have bread? What's happening? Did I get too much sun? I had no idea, but that was the only tangible thing, that rash on my arm. I do remember that. Other than that, I was pooped out and I wasn't the strong. And again, everyone was saying, oh, you have three kids. Your thyroid is really busted, but you can't get in because they wouldn't see me for 6 months. So when my physician did it, they took forever. She kept attributing it to lack of sleep, thyroid, anxiety. And it was an overall malaise and random things I knew just weren't right. And when you talk to your physician, no offense to the physicians, they have a bunch of boxes to check and they have to get you through. And they only know what they know. And if you can't verbalize, I just knew something was wrong, there I was. So I hate to say that I didn't have tangible, I didn't have the B symptoms. I didn't have any night sweats. I didn't have any itching. I didn't have any temperatures even. And I believe me, I was checking everything. I was looking for anything because the minute I had something, I could be seen by someone else.
Yes.
I was almost like hoping that there was some, you know what I mean? I'm sure
Right.
talk to people about this, but I was looking for something tangible because I knew something wasn't right and I couldn't, and I'm not a professional, I'm in marketing. So that was where it started. And then at that point, I was so lost and my cycles were off and I was feeling so shot and kind of like really sad, but not depressed, like just frustrated and lost. And I got lucky to see, it's called a functional medicine doctor. It's a mix between, she has a PhD, but she also works with like supplements if you need them. She does hormones, she does all this stuff. And she's my neighbor. She's like, I'll take your blood work. And so she took my blood work. She started seeing me as a patient. She fixed my thyroid, by the way. It was off the charts, but that wasn't the problem. That wasn't the problem. But my thyroid was to blame for some of these things. So I started seeing her as a patient. And we started just going through my hormones and stuff like that. And I was just like, okay, well, I gave her what was up. But again, the vague, obscure words of a marketer speaking to a professional doctor is just, but went through my diet. We went through all these things. And I spent a couple months with her really going through and trying to make changes in my diet, trying to work with everything, my sleep, my lifestyle, my wine, my cheese, everything, like trying. And one day, she's like, you know what? I know you're really anxious. This is all, everyone always puts anxious on my chart. I mean, it's on every chart ever since I started seeing doctors, I swear. Generalized anxiety disorder, I think. Yeah, GAD. And she's like, I know you're anxious. And I had what are they called? Sales rep come in and it's for something called the Gallery cancer screening. It screens for like 50 some odd cancers. And I just think, why not do it? It's for 50 older, but I'm your physician, so I can get it approved. this will ease your anxiety. You know, so you think something's wrong with you. I know nothing's wrong with you. I don't see anything wrong with you. Your labs are perfect. We're working on your thyroid. We're getting your weight down. I mean, I thought I was feeling better, but also you have to remember I was pushing so hard to change my everything. She just said, it's a blood test. So I was like, check, fine, yay. I mean, they could have chopped my head off at that point. I was ready for any test. But it was a blood test. It screens for certain cancers. It has a ton of false positives. So be aware of that. But I was like, I don't even care, because I was just like, I believed her believing that this would change my anxiety, because I was so convinced when people take your blood, you just start to feel better, because everyone always, banks on blood. All your labs, every kind of lab you can, every single one of those ones I can't even explain, pages. So it's like, all right, let's do it. But it's not cheap. So I had to like find the funds and dive right in. And that's what I knew about it at that point. I just kind of waited for 2 weeks. But every single time I went to the doctor or went to her or went into any specialist, because I was checking my labs, working with a dietitian, working nutritionist, a bunch of different things I was doing. I was like, everyone kept asking, especially in the practice, are you going to finally be, what was the word? Like sad, not satisfied, but are you going to, when you find out you don't have cancer? And I was like, because I wasn't sure it was cancer, but I felt, I don't know why. I don't know. I don't have the words to explain what I know in my here. And I kept thinking to myself, I don't know where everyone's going here, but I haven't got my results yet. It came in the mail, and shut up. Came in the mail to her. Sorry, I should say.
Okay.
And bottom line is they called me. They wanted to schedule an appointment, and I said, I know why you're calling me. Can we just get on the phone? We're not going to wait till next week.
Right.
And so I tested positive for a cancer marker in my lymphinoid blood. And they're called cancer markers, and there's tons of false positives. So, of course, I was like, okay. And then everyone went to the false positive conversation. So I was like, oh no. Oh no, what's this going to be like? So that's where we kind of started the journey, because I knew that, now we have to prove it's real. It's new. It's a blood test. It's a functional medicine doctor, and I don't have a fever or night sweats. And do you know what I'm saying? So I was like, okay, well, I, as much as I want to believe, I was surprised I wasn't. So I wanted to know what was next, but we had to be just like every other process, you have to prove you need certain tests. So the first test in order to figure out a lymphoma, especially because people can feel me all day long. They have been feeling me all the time. No one felt anything. I don't feel anything now. I still don't feel anything. So I had to go through all the steps of going to a PCP and showing this blood work, or not this test, and asking for a CT scan and getting that approved and pushing it through insurance and going through those steps. And I know a lot of people, almost all people, have to go through and this is where you learn it, self-advocacy and the fight. And I don't mean to be pessimistic about it, but it is a fight. You have to go in with all of your guns, all of your knowledge, all of your everything, and push. I had to work with my employer. I had to work with my PCP. I had to work with my functional medicine doctor. I had to work with Gallery. I had to make sure I had all of my purple folder, I had my folder of everything. I'm like a nut. And I finally got in to get a CT scan. Of course, it wasn't covered because of all these like things, but at that point in time, I got a CT scan. They just picked an area. Oh, here, the middle part. And there was a piece where they thought they saw something. So I had to go back. But I had to go back and I had to ask for all of those things again to get the rest of my area. Finally, they found a mass behind my chest. I'm going to say like 6 by 6 centimeter or something. I wish I could tell you. I wish I had the details, but it was a mass behind my chest. So there's no way anyone was poking anywhere. And then there were a few friends around it, but nowhere pokeable. Palpable, I believe the medical term is. And so finally I had this thing. I was so upset. I mean, I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? But I was just like, wow, okay, now I have the fever. I have the thing that I need to go somewhere. So that's the next step. You know, everyone always wants to feel something. So that was that. But I was also scared. All I thought about it was my kids flashing in my face. And then just, where do you go from here? So that was my reaction. And I knew I had a long road. I actually said to my doctor, I told you so. But she knows me well enough to laugh. She wasn't like, you know what I mean? It wasn't like this moment where I was like, Sue or something. I was just like, I told you guys. I told you guys. I told my husband. I was like, I told you so. I told you so. But then I was like, oh my God, I was right. And I was like, wait a minute. I wish I was wrong.
Right. Right.
So that was that. Yeah. I think doctors are so used to people coming in with something. I'm not going to say silly, but people coming in and overusing the system that they
Right.
are so, not everyone. I'm just saying that because people do use the system, especially after COVID, and especially they have these windows. But so, I mean, ultimately, I was glad I was right, mad I was right. I knew I had a road ahead of me, but I didn't know what that meant. And neither did my functional medicine doctor because she didn't do this test. First one. So I was the first one. So she's like, you have cancer. Ultimately, in everyone's brain, in terms of all the people that I would reach out to, it was as simple as, well, now you have the CT scan, you can reach out to whatever cancer institution that you want to find out how you can move forward with a biopsy. And I said, oh, well, that seems pretty straightforward. Let's move on. So I, worked on the CT, taking the CT and calling. And, there were a couple places they recommended, they meaning my functional medicine doctor and or the World Wide Web, and taking my CT. But it turns out as I called that you can't just go with a CT. You have to find a thoracic surgeon you have to find a thoracic surgeon and have them go in there. Then you need to send it out. Then you need to prove that. So the CT wasn't proof enough to get into a cancer center or a professional like oncologist. I could see whatever doctor I wanted to, but it didn't matter. So I found a thoracic oncologist who got me open and got back there. It was he didn't know what to do. He had to reach out to a bunch of people because it was like near my heart, like, and they had to figure it out. So anyway, finally I got that done a couple days before Christmas, and they went back and they had to send it out, and I had to wait, of course. So, but that was the next piece of the puzzle. But while I was waiting for that, I knew that I had to get things approved, like the surgery, obviously, then I had to wait for the biopsy results. So I knew that, and it was around Christmas time. So I had to get my head in the game because people think that that's the sad part is like, I know, but like not everyone thinks that like it just comes back and you can move forward and everything's quick, and it's the worst feeling. And everyone will always say waiting is this part is the worst, but you would expect it to happen fast. It doesn't. It just doesn't. And it turns out that when my biopsy results came back 2 weeks later, it wasn't conclusive. So after I did all my like steps and got kind of my ducks in a row, which I thought were my ducks, and they said some of it was crushed biopsy, and they had to send it out to another institution like in Utah for another person to look at the stains and the slides and stuff like that. So I just lost my mind because I was like, more time.
Right. Right.
Growing? Is it growing? Is it having babies and spreading everywhere? And sure enough, I got the flu. So right after I had that, I got the flu, and then all of the symptoms came. I lost my voice. I got sick. I got a fever. All the things happened. I had no voice after that flu. And it's because everything started triggering my immune system because I had a biopsy, a very big surgery, in my opinion. Then I had the flu, and then they started moving me along fast, and my immune system was like, what? So all of my everything started getting worse, which was interesting because it kind of kicked it off. Because honestly, I felt worse after the biopsy than I did before.
Wow.
Isn't that weird?
Wow. It's
So
almost
anyway,
like your
I used
body, yeah.
and I talked to my surgeon and I tried to use my words. He didn't know as much, he could only do so much. He knows how to do it. He was very, everyone trusted him. But he could only know so much and do so much. So once I had the results after waiting again, he let go of me. So you move on. But by that time, I finally got able to go to cancer consultation because I had proof on paper. It took forever to get it. There was a PA that actually told me I didn't get it back, but it was in my portal. Like my results of my biopsy came in through my portal, but no one called me. So I was like, excuse me. I know I don't want to be like, annoying, but that my results are in here and I don't understand them. And it's my biopsy results. I kind of need them because I've been waiting a really long time. And I got to get into the cancer place so I can start chemo. And he's like, no, I don't see him. I'm like, oh, this is a system. Not to be mean, But I was like, what? And sure enough, the surgeon actually called me and apologized. And he's like, they put him in the wrong place. I was like, is this real life? And there's so many things that go on that you just have to chase and do all your work. You're also pooped out and sick. I want the point of why I even was so happy to talk to you is just, I felt so alone. So alone, so alone. I was losing my mind, even though I finally had an answer, I was still losing my mind. And it was the loneliest feeling. And I thought I was being just a emotional mom, and I would cry at like every weird thing. And I didn't want the kids to know, but I want, because it's happens. So my full diet, when I got my second round, my biopsy from Utah, it came in as the piece that was able to be diagnosed was Hodgkin's. They did not know a stage. They did not know anything else. They had to leave it to the cancer. I chose to go to Dana-Farber. They were going to leave that to the oncologist and the team to work on staging, and that would be through the PET. Because they've done my blood work 7,000 times. It's not going to help. The CT is now old news. All of the CTs were old news. So a PET was going to be the way to stage it. And I didn't get a PET until after my consultation and after they started planning my chemo. I had my chemo and my port dates before I even had my PET date. But ultimately I got my port in, and then 4 days later I started chemo. So they got the ball rolling. And then after my PET, they decided that they said I was, they call it between 2B. No, not B, because I didn't have B symptoms, between stage 2 and 3, because the little friends, the big one obviously is the main guy, but the friends, they didn't know how activated they were. So, and they just wanted to start pumping me with chemo to see what would work and what wouldn't. My treatment plan was ABVD for 6 cycles, which is 12 visits. So I tried to go in as a good student. I went to my cancer chemo college, I called it. You meet with the nurse the day before. But at that time, I had already done, I felt like I almost knew as much as she did in terms of what to buy, what to do, what to expect, because not as much as she did, as much as she shared, because I had so much time. Why not prep? That's my nature. So I knew what was coming, and I was so desperate to start that my side effects almost were, and the first infusion were all psychosomatic, like in terms of it was obviously anxiety. But in terms of the first infusion, I asked for fluid, so I'd be extra hydrated, because hydration is everything. So my first infusion, during and after, I feel as though my body was very fair. My brain was not. And then over time, of course, the side effects are number 1, dehydration, constipation from the anti-nausea meds, And overall, as a 44, at the time, 43-year-old, a mom, obviously, I had been a mover. I was often in movement. I was often doing things. I was often thinking ahead, planning lists, kids, things. You are at not everyone, and I'm sure the younger folk bounce back a little bit better, but I felt kind of like I was I call it a chemo coma. I really felt like someone was like laying on top of me and I was really pooped out. My appetite was quite good. Let's just be honest. I was eating just fine. I was eating all my favorite terrible foods because even though I know so many people and I admire them, go into health mode, like eat really well, do everything by the book. I was just like, I'll eat because I'm hungry and I'm scared that one day I might not want to. So my appetite was good, but it's just my overall everything. My body was a big, heavy mass, and I took a lot of it's Epsom salt and baking soda baths, and I drank a ton of water and liquid IVs just to get it out, just to get it all out, because I knew that first 24 to 48 hours, the more I could get out, the more I could start moving. You almost feel like crinkly and like tight, and you know what I'm saying? I highly recommend chewing ice during the A portion of your AVBD, and salt water as a mouthwash when you start and when you go through it, please, everyone. So that would be my advice overall for the first symptoms. And then of course, as you go on, it weighs on you heavier. So, I'm on my sixth. I have a harder time bouncing back. I would say my third or fourth day is where I get really frustrated and I force myself to really kind of dive right in. I had my they call it midway. I had another PET scan. My AVBD cocktail is working on the friends and slowly on the big mass. There's so many first and second lines of lymphoma cocktails that I wasn't nearly as anxious as I thought I would be going into the PET scan. Obviously, my first one, I was completely anxious, but the second one, I was like, now that I don't submit to everyone like Googling everything. It's not necessarily Google, but there are informed websites out there, and there are a lot of recent medical, and the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society has more. Certainly don't lose hope. That's without saying, but because I know you feel, or anyone would feel like, and of course you should feel like you're the only person on the planet. You're not, and it stinks. But while you have the time, breathe and do your homework. Talk to professionals. Go to Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Reach out to your physician, whoever you trust medically, or actual professional, and do your homework and look at it as the biggest project of your life. And I hope one day, keep speaking about Gallery, because one day it won't have to be out of pocket, and one day it won't have to be something that was a willy-nilly random thing. People are actually taking these it's a blood screen, and they're getting ahead of it. And the earlier you get anything, even pancreatic cancer, for example, I mean, that's a doozy. Though you get ahead of it, you're in control a little bit more. And when you're sick, you feel out of control. And I think that's a huge, huge, huge thing. And you're not alone.